Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar from Similarweb. I'm Ron Asher, the CTO for Similarweb. And together with me, I have Michael and Ben, who are senior consultants and working closely with our customers. Today, we're going to walk you through the changes that AI is introducing in the traffic of the internet and how people are behaving on the internet and what is changing compared to the legacy that we are familiar with. We'll start with a brief description of our data. So in essence, we're having global coverage. We are covering more than 100 million websites, 8 million mobile applications on Android and iOS. We are providing daily data about keywords appearing in Google search and on-site search, covering 6 billion, including estimations of volume and clicks, covering 5 million retailers, 250 million SKUs. This global coverage and comprehensive coverage is built on multiple ingredients, and the multiple ingredients are used for us to get you the best accuracy of our estimations and also the robustness of the estimation, so we can rely on our data continuously to appear in time. And here below, you can see some customers that are trusting us. And I'll highlight it, the bottom left. Google is one of our largest customers, and it's exciting to work with them because they know everything about the internet. And as they're using our data, for us, it's amazing feedback that we are doing something right with our estimations. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Michael to continue from here.
Thank you, Ron, and hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here and learn more or share some more information about the competitive AI space, how it's impacting the consumer journey, and ultimately how Similarweb can help you and your business keep up with this ever-changing space. So without further ado, thank you, Ben. So we all know that chatbots are taking the world by storm. This is total visits by the most popular chatbots here. ChatGPT with early mover advantage has seen over 100% increase in global traffic since this time last year. This is incredible and unprecedented. And to put this into perspective, we haven't seen a domain outside the AI space show this kind of performance in the past 5 years. So this further buttresses the notion that these aren't just sites or a new product offering, but rather a large-scale behavioral shift in the way we interact with the internet, with businesses, and how we procure information. Diving into US adoption here, this is a quick forecast model. It may seem surprising that in late last year, only 35% of the digital users in the United States adopted chatbots in one way or another, which has now grown to 50% today, meaning that US users are using some of the top 10 chatbots listed. And as soon as the end of this year, it's expected that over half of the population in the United States will adopt chatbots in one way or another. And by 2029, over 80% of digital users in the United States will adopt AI. Now, of course, this is an exponential model, so it will never reach 100%, but it's clear that AI is here to stay and will rival traditional search. And we'll get to that in just a few moments. However, it's important to make the caveat or to note that this is how we see AI through the lens of today, right? This could take a completely different shape in the months to come, and it could have a completely different use case in a year, right? Just think about where we were 1 year ago, especially as these AI companies invest more in devices, expansion into the agentic AI space, and perhaps a time where bots will be visiting these domains more than humans, right? Next slide, please. So double clicking here on adoption by chatbots in the US market. So we already know that ChatGPT is a clear winner with 41% adoption, followed by Gemini with 8.5% and Perplexity with 3%. And all of these chatbots we see are increasing in adoption. One thing I did want to make note of is DeepSeek, which is colored in the bottom here in gray, which for those who remember caused such an extreme disruption in the AI space earlier this year, and which grew to be the second most popular AI chatbot behind GPT at its peak in February. What we've since noticed is a significant decline, nearly 50% of its February peak. And within certain audience groups, we've seen this swing to become even more dramatic. The takeaway here is not only getting a high sense at the AI adoption among the US population by LLM, but rather the general lack of brand affiliation. We're always searching for what's best, what's most reliable, what's fastest, and the most integratable, which we'll get to also in just a moment. Now, digging through this data, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the top two heavyweights in the AI space in the US market today, ChatGPT and Gemini. So this chart represents the difference between the rate of adoption at the beginning and at the end of each quarter since Q4 2024. So ChatGPT is clearly the market leader with the highest rate of adoption and by other metrics as well. And its adoption rate is growing steadily at just under 10% every quarter. But as we look back from 2024 to now, we can see the adoption rate of Gemini has actually been steadily increasing and outpacing ChatGPT, 33% in Q2 of 2025, with 15% month over month in April and May. Clearly outpacing ChatGPT, and it's an indicator of what's to come. I think we're going to continue to see this snowball not only for Gemini, but for other LLMs with broader ecosystems like Microsoft Copilot. Next slide, please. Thank you. So diving into some of the audiences with some of the heaviest adoption rates, developers and students, both of which are key demographics or key audiences for AI currently. Unsurprisingly, both cohorts have adopted chatbots in greater numbers than the general market. As of May, developers have adopted AI in one way or another at 70% and students at 75%, both of which are growing. Double clicking on students for a moment, 75% adoption, that means 3 of every 4 university students today use AI regularly. I personally wish we had ChatGPT. I had ChatGPT as a university student. It would have made my life a lot easier. But it goes to show the presence ChatGPT and Perplexity specifically have on university campuses. Perplexity and ChatGPT, again, rolling out special offers and promotional activities for students as well. So it's clearly a key demographic and a key focus for these AI companies. And then pivoting to the future, right? Imagine 3 of every 4 students growing month over month, graduating and then entering the workforce, further addressing the notion that AI is indeed a part of our future. And it stresses the importance for all of us as working professionals in the digital ecosystem to adopt and use these tools. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this is a look at the share of outgoing referral traffic, not volume. This allows for more apples to apples comparison. And it provides a lens into popular topics for AI use, which include arts and entertainment. So this includes social media, YouTube, etc. News and media, so Reuters, BBC, and science and education. Definitely inflated by the student audience we were just referring to. It can also be used to identify how individual LLMs are being used. So we see ChatGPT is used across the board, heavier use in arts and shopping. Perplexity, for those of you who have used it, we know it's it's less conversation oriented and more citation based, which is clearly why it's being used for quick factual responses, or factual responses, yes, like science, news, and finance. And it'll be really interesting to see how this chart will look in the coming months as more LLMs are entering into various partnerships, specifically in the e-com space. So Shopify with ChatGPT and PayPal with Perplexity. Now here we have a caveat and an important one. The computers and electronics and technology industry has been removed as this industry category compromises the majority of outgoing share of traffic, most of which is to owned and operated domains. For example, Gemini mostly directs folks to Google properties, Microsoft or Copilot to Microsoft, etc. It also explains a key detail and provides additional color on what we're seeing. So in this chart, we see a lot of Perplexity and ChatGPT, 2 LLMs owned by companies focusing on AI software development. We don't see a lot of Copilot and Gemini, two LLMs owned by legacy tech companies with existing ecosystems and are looking to grab a market share into the evolving AI space. So going back to the referral share to own sites in the technology vertical, 91% of Gemini's outgoing traffic is to a Google domain, whether it's Google Docs, Google Search, what have you. Compare this with ChatGPT's 37%, and Perplexity is less than 1% of its share of outgoing traffic is to a Perplexity domain. This is why we think there will be a snowball effect in adoption for some of these established big tech companies as they develop their own LLM capabilities and develop specific unique entry points into existing product ecosystems. Next slide, thank you. So pivoting to search, how does this all compare to the #1 website in the world by site visits, Google search? ChatGPT is the clear market leader. We've established that. It's a great indicator of trends in the AI space. And again, using a forecasting model, we can see there is actually a downward trend, which came as a surprise to me, in unique visitors over time for search. And while ChatGPT clearly grows exponentially and will potentially outperform Google as early as late 2028. Another thing I found interesting, I don't know if anyone watched the NBA Finals, but Google is aware of this. They released an advertisement which addresses the changing landscape of search and actually tries to guide customers to use Gemini and AI integrations in their Google properties, which is pretty cool. All right, next slide, please. And then lastly, we have a look here at audience interest, which highlights the extent of audience overlap and showcases our affinity score, which indicates the strength of the relationship between two sites and their user base. So here we're comparing Google visitation trends versus ChatGPT's visitation trends and vice versa. And this ultimately illustrates the competitive nature of these two phenomena at present, right? Search or AI versus search. Over the course of late 2024, ChatGPT's affinity score with Google rose, climbing to become the domain with the second highest affinity score behind YouTube. And now what we're seeing now is actually an inversion, right? Where Google's audience share a higher score with ChatGPT use than ChatGPT's user base does with search use. We'll continue to see this trend, right, as AI has a massive impact on traditional search. Last slide, please. Thank you very much. So in summary here, legacy tech giants entering the AI space. We're talking Google with Gemini, Microsoft with Copilot, even Meta and Meta AI and their different LLM offerings. They are enhancing AI capabilities and integrating AI into existing services, whether that's Google Suite or some of Meta's social media platforms. Secondly, highly agile LLM giants are leading trends to remain competitive with outside integrations, right? Specialized GPTs and broadening product offerings and features. We're thinking of the Claudes, the Perplexities, and the OpenAIs. And lastly, search is declining, but Google and Microsoft, the traditional search giants, are not. And thank you very much for your time. And with that, I'll hand it off to Ben.
Perfect. Thank you, Michael. So we talked through the context of GenAI and ChatGPT and the impact they're having across the landscape. But now we're going to dig into how this is impacting real consumers. And to articulate this, we're going to look at myself. And I have 3 tasks to complete. 3 tasks to complete between now and August. And you're probably wondering, why is there a time frame on this and why have I got to hit these 3 times before August? Well, in August, I'm having a baby. And with that becomes a number of new journeys to complete, new things that we have to go after and think about that maybe we haven't considered in the past. And my 3 tasks are opening a new savings account, which I haven't done in many years, booking a baby moon. So for those of you who aren't familiar with a baby moon, essentially what it is, it's a vacation or a holiday you normally take before the baby comes. Bear in mind now is June, August is coming around the corner. I think this is probably going to be a post-baby trip, but that's something else on my list of tasks. And then finally buying a baby monitor. That's the final thing from my task. So I have something in financial, something in travel, and something in retail to complete over the next month or so. But luckily I have help. You've seen so far from the data that we have, I figured why not tap into Similarweb's data to see how other people are completing these journeys? Because for me, 2 things matter. 1, efficiency. How can I do this quickly? How can I really achieve my 3 tasks in a way that is fast and reliable? But secondly, what are other people doing? And I really care about real consumer behavior. Embarking on this journey of having a child, you see that you want to hear other people's opinions. So why not see how they behave and how they shop online and mirror that for myself? I had a realization. So as I was going through the data, I had a core realization, and that was that as we've seen so far, that AI was a fundamental part of this journey. And as we tap into the data, you'll kind of see how this is now impacting everyday consumers. There's a slide that we shared recently, and it's really staggering to see now the role that ChatGPT is playing in the global landscape in terms of actually how much the volume of traffic is. Like Michael's alluded to this in his previous slides, but in the month of April, ChatGPT was the 5th largest website globally. And actually, month on month, it was the only website to grow in traffic. And you can see here across the board, we have the established players, Google, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, X, WhatsApp, but ChatGPT was the only one growing. And look at the substantial size there, 13% month on month. So you can see it's becoming a core part of people's online journeys as they complete their online tasks. And it isn't just a US phenomenon. We can see this globally. You can see it across the board. In the US, in the month of May, there were 786 million people who are using ChatGPT. In the UK, you can see there's 256 million visits in the month of May. And you can see this across the board, India, Australia, Japan. So it really is a global phenomenon as people go about completing their everyday tasks. It's no longer something reserved just for developers and people working in commercial spaces. Now it's becoming something people are using for everyday tasks as they go about and complete their daily lives. But where are people going after? So Michael's alluded to this a little bit previously, but where essentially is the referral traffic going to? And the interesting thing here is I complete my 3 tasks in financial, in travel, and in retail. As you can see the surge in traffic. You can see the 5x increase in people leaving ChatGPT to go and complete a shopping journey. You can see in finance the 3x increase over the last 6 months. And in travel, you can see the 4x increase. So really is a sizable number of people who are researching on ChatGPT and then leaving to complete a transaction on one of these different segments. And to summarize really the difference between the platforms in terms of where they're going, and we kind of showed a bigger view of this a second ago, but what's really important for me here is the difference between the platforms. And Michael talked about this in terms of how Perplexity is driving more to Perplexity-owned areas. But the thing for me on this as I complete my journey is ChatGPT is having an impact on retail. And you can see on the second bucket there for ChatGPT, the second biggest destination after social is actually going through to retail. So as we go through this journey now and talk about the impact, that's something that's going to become more important as ChatGPT continues to develop its relationships with retail. So retail. This is the really exciting part now, is because not only is it driving traffic from ChatGPT to retail, but actually we're seeing higher levels of conversion. So what we're looking at here is the conversion rate of people who are leaving ChatGPT to complete a transaction versus that of Google. And what we're seeing is almost a 2x increase of ChatGPT conversion rates versus Google. And you can see this is opening up over time. So hypothesis on this, people are conducting their research within ChatGPT. When they leave, they feel very qualified to purchase, and that could be driving the higher levels of conversion rates. And we can see this growing as time goes forward. So with that, back to my tasks, we got some context about retail, we got some context about finance and travel, but let's really dig into my first task now on this journey. And that is opening a savings account. And naturally, I forgot everything we just talked about, and I went back to Google and I typed in high interest savings account. And what did I see straight away? I saw that NerdWallet was the sponsored article that was coming up first in terms of driving to traffic. Now, what is NerdWallet? NerdWallet is a referral site. So their real goal is to get people to kind of come to the site, and then from there they refer out to financial institutions. So as we think about the role referral plays online, I figured let's dig into our data and see what the role that plays for the financial sector. And what we can see is that for finance, referral is actually almost 10% of traffic coming to their sites comes from referral. And this actually leads the market. You can see the industry average is around 5% of traffic coming from referral, retail around 6%. But what I'm really finding surprising here is how important referral is for the financial industry. So taking a double click on that, what is compromising the referral traffic, and kind of who are the key players? Well, the key player is ChatGPT. Now, I actually made this slide last month with only April data, and ChatGPT was number 2. But what you can see now is ChatGPT has become the number 1 site to refer traffic to financial sites. And you can see here NerdWallet, Credit Karma, Experian, Doctor of Credit. So what we're seeing now is not only ChatGPT is driving some of the traffic, it's actually now becoming the #1 platform to drive traffic to financial sites. So really changing the game and accelerating over time with almost 22 million in terms of referral site visits over the last 12 months. I figured, how does this index then? So where do people actually go from here? So yes, we can see ChatGPT driving traffic, but are they driving it to the usual players? And what's really interesting is that actually it's not favoring the traditional big banks. We're seeing here an index. So what we're looking at, the share of ChatGPT referrals versus their share of search referrals. So the historic way that many of these sites got traffic. And you can see that for Ally and for SoFi, more disruptive challenger players in the market, they get almost 5x amount of share when they're getting referrals from ChatGPT versus the traditional players. So you can see those who've won the past aren't necessarily going to win the future as we move towards this era of GEO versus SEO. And it gets even scarier when you look at it over time. So I looked at the last 5 months to see how this was trending out. And I basically looked at Ally, Bank of America, Amex, Wells Fargo. And you can see in January across all the chatbots that Ally was getting a fairly normal amount of traffic, referral traffic. But you see a real change in May. You see it really accelerate. And then in May, Ally becomes the #1 from these 4 sites getting referral traffic from chatbots. And the majority is coming, generally speaking, from ChatGPT. So it got me thinking as I'm going through this journey, like, why is this happening? Why is Ally getting more traffic than their peers? So I did something really basic and really stupid, and something you can do as well, is I just asked ChatGPT. I asked it the simple question, like, why does Ally Bank get more referral traffic from ChatGPT than traditional banks? Now, it gave me 5 reasons. It gave me saving focused user intent, sure. It gave me digital only model, transparent, simple offerings. Interesting here, it says no gimmicks, no minimums. So it's obviously citing some of their branded copy. Strong in a focused niche, I understand that. But the last one is one that got me really interested because it said neutral, organic recommendation system. So as we double click into this, it says ChatGPT prioritizes well-reviewed, user-friendly products, not ads. Ally consistently performs well in organic sources like Reddit and review sites. So what we're seeing here already is a real sneak peek into some of the other areas that are going to become super important as businesses look to optimize themselves going forward for the age of GenAI. So in finance, in my first task that I completed, what did we learn? So we learned that ChatGPT is now the #1 referral source in the financial industry in the US over the last 12 months. We saw that challenger banks are poised to steal share, and the age of GEO is really going to be impacting those who've won in the past in SEO. And then we've seen about what things that ChatGPT are favoring. So organic, Reddit, review sites, and it also has opinions. I don't know if you saw some of the content there in the text, but it really was giving an opinion on why essentially it thought that Ally should be winning in this space. So curious to see that play out in finance. So baby monitor. So if you remember from my list of tasks, my second one I have on my list is to purchase a baby monitor. And I thought I'd ground us in the context here as we're going into retail and e-commerce around speed of adoption. So we're looking at here the speed of Amazon's growth to 10% of Walmart from a revenue perspective. So Amazon launched in 1995. It took them around 15, 16 years to reach 10% of Walmart's revenue, their biggest competitor. And now you can see they're kind of neck and neck. And I think in the latest statements, they'll probably be surpassing each other. So you can see it took 17 years for Amazon to reach 10% of Walmart's revenue. It took ChatGPT 4.0, so the latest iteration, less than 6 months to reach 10% of Google's unique visitors. So it gives you that context of scale and speed of adoption. Like Google has been around for many years, has a large amount of share of the market. And you can see just from the 4.0 version, it took only 6 months when it launched last year to hit 10% of Google's traffic. So really, really becoming one of those players now that is going away at the unique visitors. So let's put this together. And here's the visual, right? Here's the visual showing how ChatGPT reached 10% of Google's unique visitors and how long it took Amazon to reach 10% of Walmart's revenue. And you can see it took less than a handful of years versus 16 years. So the speed of adoption, the speed of way consumers are moving to ChatGPT to complete everyday tasks is astonishing and something we're seeing accelerate as time goes on. So we talked a bit earlier around where people are going from the platforms. So I think I'd dive in now into retail. where are ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini driving people from a retail perspective? Now, if we look at Google, overwhelmingly drives people to Amazon, to Walmart, to eBay. ChatGPT pretty much mirrors that right now. So if we look at the month of May, we could see once again Amazon is getting around 42% of the traffic from there, Walmart around 21%, eBay 11. Interesting that Perplexity actually drives more to Walmart. So we're seeing a flip between Walmart and Amazon in Perplexity, and you can also see Target coming into the mix. And then finally, Gemini, once again, Amazon, Walmart, and interesting enough, Etsy. So I guess maybe some more of that visual inspiration is coming in there to drive people to a platform like Etsy in the month of May. So you're seeing a real difference in kind of how these come to life in terms of where, from a retail perspective, they're driving consumers. But what's really interesting is how volatile it is. So this is looking actually at just the last 6 days. So the last slide was looking at May. This is looking at the last 6 days. And as I'm buying a baby monitor, I figured let's look at consumer electronics. And what we can see here is what we call AI brand visibility. So essentially the brands being cited within prompts within the consumer electronic space. And what we see here, if you look at Amazon in black, you can see it goes from low 20s on day one, so 6 days ago, up to almost 60% of brand visibility by day 6. So you can see huge volatility in terms of when brands and retailers are showing up for different prompts within the platform. But where are they then going and buying? And this was something that really is the kind of pivotal part of this. But the one thing I'll say about this is looking back a little bit. We're looking back at Q4 here and seeing the impact of conversions from ChatGPT. So when people leave the platform, where do they actually go and purchase? We've talked a lot around where they're going to. But for consumer electronics here, we can see that overwhelmingly 68% from Q4 were still going and purchasing at Amazon, Walmart 4%, eBay 3%, Target 2, Best Buy 2, then a whole swathe of others. So this is not too unexpected in terms of what we've seen from a consumer behavior perspective, because Amazon has a similar share of the consumer electronic space. And you could see from the traffic as well, the outgoing impact that Amazon was having. But I will leave you with one caveat in the retail section and one interesting point for us to ponder. You guys may have seen the integration with Shopify. And what we're seeing now, and what I'm seeing anecdotally, I am seeing an increase in prevalence of Shopify integrated D2C players being featured as buy now options within ChatGPT. Now, this partnership was only signed earlier this year and it's not fully rolled out. But what I'm starting to see is some small players who are having the Shopify integration are being favored over the larger players. So back to my baby monitor, you can see here I was looking at the Owlet. And on the right-hand side is all the content, right? And you can see where the content is coming from. It's coming from Best Buy, Amazon, Reddit, the usual players. But the buy now links is coming from websites that we looked into and they had only a couple thousand visits a month. Buy FSA, Shop Wealthcare. So even though the players on the right-hand side had an offering, which actually in this instance was cheaper, it was favoring some of the players out there who have the Shopify integration. So one thing for us to kind of monitor in the future is how does this play out going forward? Do we still continue to see large amounts of people leaving ChatGPT to go and purchase on Amazon or Best Buy? Or are we going to start to see the in-app purchase behavior really changing the landscape and the integration of Shopify having a real impact? So, what do we learn about GenAI and retail as I went on my baby monitor adventure? Well, we saw the pace. We saw how ChatGPT is outpacing Amazon's growth trajectory. We saw in the past how Amazon has really benefited from ChatGPT and continues to do so right now, getting a large amount of traffic from the platform. But the area for us to watch out is the future. ChatGPT could potentially decentralize e-commerce with the prioritization of Shopify integrated players. We could see smaller players start to nip away in the retail space with this integration within the platform. So don't worry, I didn't forget the baby moon. That's still definitely on the agenda, despite the fact that I should have booked it months ago. So looking into travel, we thought we'd look at about how essentially consumers are using GenAI and ChatGPT and Perplexity and Gemini around how they're using it for travel. And what's interesting is, unlike some of the other areas we talked through today, actually it's a very similar process. We're seeing right now within ChatGPT that around 72% of prompts are looking at the planning side of things. So people planning their trips, essentially looking ahead, 20% into booking, 6% in preparation, and then 3% into post-travel. So potentially writing a review. So what we see here is not necessarily a huge change in the behavior we typically see from someone undertaking an online consumer journey for the travel industry. And then we look at terms of the breakdown of what people are looking at within travel prompts. We're seeing around 59% is looking into lodging. So people are looking for inspiration into accommodation. Around 19% of people are looking into flights. Around 18% are looking into general travel. And when I was embarking on this journey for myself, this was the most important thing for me. I was looking at how can I fly somewhere within 3 hours of New York that had great kids facilities. There was something that was under a certain budget. So for me, it was coming back with lodging recommendations. And that's how we're seeing many people use ChatGPT predominantly within the travel space. But who's winning? So we looked at similar viewers earlier in terms of the different platforms, and we compared it against Google as well in terms of where is the referral traffic going to. And interestingly enough, we're seeing that Airbnb is really poised for success here. We can see that for ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Copilot, the largest share of referral traffic is actually going to Airbnb. So we're seeing here kind of how that is playing out in terms of the space right now for the GenAI perspective. If you look at Google, it's very much still focused in the travel space with airlines getting a predominant amount of referral traffic, TripAdvisor, and you can see Airbnb down the bottom. So we're seeing a different landscape emerge in terms of where the referral traffic is coming to versus what we've seen from Google in the past within the travel space. But how does this look over time? So we just saw that Airbnb was picking up a ton of referral traffic and kind of really being favored. Now, if we look at this over time, it's only accelerating. So you can see a view here from August of last year through to May, and we're looking at Airbnb at the top, and you have Vrbo, a similar system. We have Hilton and Marriott, and you can see that real acceleration over time where Airbnb is really starting to ramp up in terms of getting referral traffic through from ChatGPT. So finally, what do we learn about GenAI and travel? Well, initially we saw that travel GenAI behavior is closely mirroring search. At the very start of it, we saw very similar use cases. But then as we progress through the data, what we could see is that GenAI referral is not the same as Google referral. We're seeing different players emerging and really stealing away and ramping up the share. And similar to what we saw in some of the other industries we talked through, we're seeing that real shift and different players are poised to win versus those in the past. So your three tasks, I know you probably have many tasks, but building from this, your three tasks are to understand the role of GenAI in your consumer journey. How is it playing right now for your industry? How essentially are people using it to discover you or learn more about you? Secondly, monitor and build brand mentions. We've gone through a few examples here about how we have been doing this for clients and how we can do it within our pro platform and advisory services. But essentially, what are people saying about your brands? What essentially are people looking for? And then how can you build brand mentions to make sure you're poised to succeed in the future? And then just like a baby, ChatGPT has been cute today, but it's critical tomorrow. So we're seeing no longer is it small, no longer is it just cute. We're actually seeing this become a fundamental part of consumer journeys. So understanding the role it plays is really critical for the future to really make sure you're poised for success. So if you want to find out where I went on my baby moon, you'll have to reach out. I will keep that close to the chest.